found, actually found a lecture about transportation of abnormal loads and vehicles that I had uploaded onto YouTube last year already. So I will share that link and you can listen to that recording. I'm not going to teach a new class on that. Transportation of abnormal vehicles and abnormal loads is not very extensively examined. So don't waste an inordinate amount of time on uh, Unit 9. Rather concentrate on the other units. Specifically, Unit 8, dangerous goods, is always important. The way I have examined transportation of dangerous goods in the exam is similar to the question that you got in your assignment. That type of structure. It's not the same question, but it's that structure where it's essentially just a little course study, a case study as an introduction, and then a whole variety of questions, short questions following on that. Go through your assignments well. Go through the memorandum that is attached. If you download your marked assignment, the memorandum is literally attached right at the end. Go through that. It will assist you with your preparation in the exam. All in all, so far, I'm happy with your results. Assignments were good. Tests were good. In general, obviously, there are always exceptions. But all in all, you're progressing well. So this weekend is going to be a heavy weekend of assessments for you. The makeup test on Saturday morning. It's online, but it's not a quiz. You have to type your answers. Anybody can write that test. It's open for everybody. It will replace your face-to-face test, or I will record the highest mark of either the face-to-face test or that test. It does not replace a quiz. If you have missed a quiz, that is bad luck. I'm sorry. The makeup test does not replace a quiz. The instructions about that are very clear. It obviously also does not replace a missed assignment. Okay, let me just find my PowerPoint slides. I'm a little bit confused. If somebody can perhaps help me, otherwise we'll figure it out. I've already hosted a lecture on transportation of dangerous goods. Can you remember how far I got at the time? What was the last thing I spoke about? Can you remember? Okay, Miss Angulak, if you can give me a thumb, you're the only one that's left in the class. Everybody else seems to have absconded. Um, can you see my screen? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen? Okay, excellent. Thank you. Kupano, please keep your microphone switched off. Okay, so transportation of dangerous goods. I've got some background noise. Make sure you remain muted at all times. Unless you want to ask me a question. If you want to ask me a question, you're welcome to switch your microphone on and interrupt me while I'm teaching. But don't just have your mic on as in the background. Okay, so we've looked at dangerous goods, transportation of dangerous goods. We've found out what dangerous goods are. Highly regulated. Transportation is highly regulated because these things are dangerous. So to minimize the risk, they are highly regulated both nationally and internationally. Internationally by way of the UN model regulations, nationally by way of the Road Traffic and Transportation Act. Why is the regulation, international regulation, important? Because the transportation of dangerous goods is by its very nature international. So to facilitate international transportation, to make it easier, there are rules and regulations in place, and the regulations are the same or at least very similar across the world. Then they are classified into 9 different groups. We've done that. We looked at the definitions. Make sure you know these definitions well. What are exempt quantities? What is an incident? What is a multi-load? You need to know these definitions. We learned that the regulations, the Act and regulations regarding the transportation of dangerous goods applies to all vehicles transporting dangerous goods that are registered in Namibia, that have a Namibian registration number, irrespective of where in the world they might find themselves. Also applies to all foreign registered vehicles while they are in Namibia. There are, however, some exceptions, some instances where the regulations don't apply. This question was in your assignment. Most of you actually got this correct. The regulations also provide for a procedure where a consignor, remember, a consignor is the person who gives the dangerous goods for transportation, where a consignor can apply for an exemption for a particular load. Procedures are laid down. Don't confuse this application for an exemption for a particular load with these instances where these goods are exempted automatically. You don't have to apply. If you want to drive your car and you have fuel in your car's fuel tank, you don't have to apply to the executive director for an exemption. These are always exempted. The regulations are always never apply in these instances. This refers to a particular consignment where for whatever purpose the consignor feels that they should not apply or have to abide by all the regulations. Regulations that will normally be exempted are the regulations with regard to placarding. If you're transporting top secret, high consequence goods, you don't want huge placards on your vehicles alerting potential kidnappers to your load. Then we have already looked at multi-loads. What is a multi-load? A multi-load, more than one type of dangerous goods transported together on the same vehicle. You are probably not aware of this, but most or many of the fuel tankers that you see driving around town are actually transporting multi-loads. That back part, that tank part, which is on the vehicle, uh, is often divided in half, and one part contains petrol, the other part contains diesel. This is a multi-load, more than one type of dangerous goods transported together on the same vehicle. If you are transporting a vehicle, it must be clearly indicated on the vehicle that this is um, a multi-load. It must be clearly marked. There is a particular placard that is used for multi-loads. And your placard must specify details of all the dangerous goods that are transported. You can think to yourself that if one type of dangerous goods is dangerous, then obviously having a combination more than one type can potentially increase the risk. It is very important, therefore, that the dangerous goods, if you are transporting a multi-load, that the dangerous goods must be compatible. Compatible means they must work together, they must not increase the potential danger. Petrol and diesel, for example, are compatible because although petrol catches fire easily, has a very low flash point, diesel, on the other hand, does not. So it's safe to transport those two together. Petrol and paraffin, for example, you will never be able to transport together because they both catch fire very, very easily. They are not said to be compatible. Now, in the transportation of dangerous goods, the various role players, the consignor, the driver, or the consignee, that's the person or the company that receives the dangerous goods, they all have their specific roles to play, their specific duties. Um, these duties are discussed in the study notes. I don't have a separate slide on them. Make sure that you have gone through and you have acquainted yourself with the duties of the various parties. Um, reason why I have consignor and operator together here is because the consignor and the operator often um, is often the same person or the same company, or it can be a different company, but their duties overlap. So if it's a petrol company, but they hire a particular transporter, let's say fuel transportation, etc., or PTY Limited, to do the actual transportation, Shell Oil will be the consignor, and the people who own the trucks and supervise the trucks will be the operator. If the consignor owns their own vehicles, the consignor is the same as the operator. So there's an overlap in duties. Make sure you have looked at those duties. Legislation also requires that drivers, vehicle drivers that drive vehicles transporting dangerous goods must be highly trained. In fact, not only the drivers must be trained, but anybody who in any manner is involved in the transportation of dangerous goods requires training. Now, the UN model regulations prescribe three categories of training, namely general awareness training, function-specific training, and safety training. And every person involved in the transportation of dangerous goods must undergo um, training in all three these categories, commensurate, equal to um, their position and their job, their function within the company. So training of all three of these categories, so everybody, even the secretary, if the secretary is working for a company that is involved in the transportation or management of dangerous goods, they have to undergo training in all three of these categories. The first category is general awareness or familiarization training. General awareness or familiarization training will cover aspects such as um, the general requirements for the transportation of dangerous goods, the classification of dangerous goods, the basics of placarding and packaging, uh, and compatibility requirements, the purpose of the TREM card, available emergency expense response documents. So, to a large extent, the level to which we do uh, the transportation of dangerous goods in traffic and transportation law um, can be equated to general awareness training. So you're not going to be, after this course, you will not be experts on the transportation of dangerous goods, but you will have a basic knowledge. Then all persons must also undergo function-specific training. Function-specific training relates to that particular person's function within the company. So the training that people that are involved with the packaging and the loading of vehicles undergo will be different from the training that the drivers undergo. And all persons must also undergo safety training. The level of safety training will depend on the person's risk of exposure. So a driver will undergo a higher level of safety training than the secretary, for example. Safety training involves accident avoidance. This is, of course, important. It's good to know what to do if there has been an incident, but it is also better to know what to do to avoid accidents and incidents. So accident avoidance, also available emergency response information, what information can you get where, how to interpret it, and of course immediate procedures to follow in the case of an incident. If there is an incident, what are the immediate steps that have to be followed? So these three categories of training, general awareness, function specific, and safety training, uh, are detailed in and required in terms of the UN model regulations. Our own RTTA regulations, Regulation 311 specifically, deals with driver training specifically. So you have your categories of training, and one of them is function-specific training. Regulation 311 speaks to function-specific training. Specific training for drivers. There are certain requirements laid down that the syllabus must cover. Have a look at that, the aspects that they have to be trained on. It is the duty of the operator to ensure that their drivers are suitably qualified and licensed. Act also the regulations require that they must undergo training every 12 months at an approved training institution. And they are then issued with a certificate of training upon completion. A logical deduction that can be made is if they have to undergo training once a year and are issued with a certificate once they've completed their training, that certificate will only be valid then for 1 year, because the Act requires that 12 months later they have to go for training again. Most of you did get that right in your assignment. Some people said 5 years, don't quite know where they got that from. The validity of a certificate of training is 12 months or 1 year. So Regulation 311, that is the one that deals with driver training. Make sure you have studied that. The TRIM card. When we were looking at definitions, let's go back to our definitions. When we were looking at the definitions, we learned the definition of a TRIM card being a transport emergency card, which lists the hazards and emergency information for goods being transported, which can be used by the driver or emergency first responders during an incident. Taking a closer look at a TRIM card, that picture there on file is literally a picture of a TRIM card. A TRIM card is not a huge multi-page document. It is literally the card about, let's say, roughly a quarter of an A4 page, which must be at all times be carried in the cab of the vehicle. It is essential that these TRIM cards must be correct, comprehensive, and adequate. The TRIM card is not prepared by the consignor or the operator. TRIM cards are prepared by only a handful of accredited companies. And if you want to start transporting dangerous goods, you have to go to an accredited company and purchase the necessary TRIM cards. You cannot prepare your own TRIM cards. TRIM card contains information regarding the nature of the load, but if I say the nature of the load, I'm not talking about the specifics of the particular load, but rather the nature of the particular dangerous goods in the load. So it contains information regarding the nature of the load. So if it's petrol, there will be one for petrol that explains the nature of petrol and the risks involved in transporting petrol. It does not say this particular load is so many hundreds of liters and is being taken to Walfish Bay. So it's not, a TRIM card doesn't focus on the particular load that is on the vehicle at that moment in time, but rather the type of dangerous goods. And if it's a multi-load, if it's petrol and diesel, you will have two separate TRIM cards, one for petrol, one for diesel. Contains information regarding the nature of the load, what the risks are, that it's highly flammable, etc., etc. Recommendation on actions to be taken in case of an incident. And it provides drivers and first responders with a step-by-step disaster management plan. So, of course, the driver has been trained. The driver knows what to do and how to handle the particular dangerous substance that he or she is transporting. But what if the driver is unconscious and your first responders come here and they might arrive and they might not be, or they won't be as specifically trained on this particular, on dangerous goods. So the first thing that they will do is get hold of the TREM card. And the TREM card will tell them, do this, don't do that, don't do that. A step-by-step disaster management plan. And as I've already mentioned, that for every substance, if it's a multi-load, every substance must have its own unique TREM card. Any questions? I'm going quite fast at the moment. No questions. So dangerous goods inspectors, we've already spoken about dangerous goods inspectors. In order to be a dangerous good inspector, you must be an appointed traffic officer or road transport inspector who has undergone training. So two requirements: appointment as a traffic officer or a road transport inspector, and secondly, specific trainer. In the assignment, there were some students that in the first question of, what was it, question 3A, not quite sure now of the number of the question, but referred to the traffic cop. A traffic cop must do this. I penalize them for that. What is a traffic cop? They obviously did some artificial intelligence thing there. So if you're wondering if you wrote about the traffic cop and you didn't get all the marks you expected, it's because I penalized you for using the terminology traffic cop. So wide-ranging duties, go and look at those in your notes. Very wide-ranging duties, but there are certain limitations on their powers. Namely, dangerous goods may not be unloaded. So they can stop the vehicle, they can inspect the paperwork, they can check that the paperwork is in order, they can check that the vehicle markings are adhered to, handle an incident, but they cannot unload or order the unloading of dangerous goods unless these three requirements have been met. Namely, the operator must be duly notified. Such unloading must be authorized by the local authority, and a qualified person must supervise the unloading, decanting, or opening of packages. So they cannot just start order unloading and start opening packages. If they need to inspect packages and require them to be opened, physically opened, they need to follow these steps, notify the operator, get the authorization of the local authority, and get a qualified person to do this. In their presence, obviously, but somebody needs to be a qualified person has to do this. And then placarding. If you've been keeping your eyes open, you will have noticed that all vehicles transporting dangerous goods have got a thing that looks like this on the vehicle. This is known as a placard, a dangerous goods placard. And you need to know, you'll see there in my illustration that the different areas are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, up to 6. You need to know each of those areas on the placard. What are they called and what information must be contained there? Thinking cap question. Ask yourself, why is this important? Why must vehicles transporting dangerous goods be placarded? Simple common sense answer, once again, not a heavy legal issue. Sorry, I'm just going to go to the correct slide. Why must they be placarded? To warn the public that this vehicle is transporting dangerous goods, and also for identification purposes, so that you know this vehicle is transporting dangerous goods, but you also know what type of dangerous goods is it transporting. Every vehicle transporting dangerous goods must have 4 placards. Right in front, just an orange diamond like the one you can see here on the slide. Just the ordinary warning diamond. And then on both sides and at the back, the full placard. Full placard that looks like that. The different zones on the dangerous goods placard. Number 1, the goods identification zone. Number 2, operator telephonic advice zone. Number 3, the specialist telephonic advice zone. Number 4 is that whole big square, is the hazard class diamond zone. The diamond there in the middle, the big diamond, is the position, indicates the position of the hazard class diamond, or if it's a mixed load, it will be the mixed load diamond. And then if there are subsidiary risks as well, those little ones at the side indicate any subsidiary risks. Have a look around, people. See what you can see. So the goods identification zone, so that's number 1 over there, top left hand, contains just the UN number of the particular class of goods. So that's just a number that identifies the goods. Your operator telephonic advice zone, so that's in the middle over there, that one, number 2. Your operator telephonic advice zone must contain at least 1 or 2 telephone numbers, of which one must be a landline containing including the area code. So a Windhoek number will start with 061. This is the number of the operator at its business premises. Must be available 24 hours a day, and if you phone this number, you will get details of the cargo and the route. So the details you get by phoning the operator telephonic advice zone. So how much petrol is it? Where is it going? It's going from Windhoek to Walfish Bay via whatever. Details of the route, details of the cargo, the amount, etc., etc. You can get by phoning that number. The specialist telephonic advice zone, that's at the bottom left over there, indicated by the letter 3. Similarly, 1 or 2 telephone numbers, including a landline with an area code. This number is the number of a person who can provide specialist advice and details of the hazards and the emergency measures. So if there's an incident, this is the number you're going to be phoning. And then the hazard class diamond zone, that's over there, that identifies the particular type or class of dangerous goods. Those are the same diamond uh, indicators that we looked at or that we learned about in the beginning of this unit. Okay, any questions? Okay, so we're done with teaching. I will share the link to the lecture on abnormal loads with you. Don't stress about abnormal loads too much. And then good luck with your tests on Saturday. Thank you. Bye.